And welcome to Family Jewels. I'm Colton Bartel.
And I'm Audie Bartel.
And we're both graduate gemologists here at Susann's. And today is a little bit different episode. We're not actually going to be talking about stones, but we are going to be talking about how we came to really know about the stones, I guess, and kind of got into the industry, really.
Okay.
So, I'll let you start. That's where it started, so.
Okay, so we were kind of talking about this before we started about how far back we were going to go. So I guess we're going to go back to my college days. So kind of like most college students, I kind of stumbled around trying to figure out what I was going to major in, but I took a class at a small college in Oklahoma and found out that I really liked geology. Ended up going to a even smaller university at Enid, Oklahoma, at Phillips University, and majored in geology.
Which is now part of Northwestern University.
Yeah, that's the other thing that Colton and Quentin thinks that every school I go to ends up closing, so...
And or moving.
Yeah. But anyways, at this university, doing the geology thing, my favorite class was mineralogy. And just to get a BS, we basically had to do a senior research paper or thesis, whatever you want to call it, to graduate. You could have all your credits done, but you had to complete this independent study thing or whatever. So I basically did it on diamonds. Well, I'm sitting in basically an oil state. There's not much that's known about diamonds at that time, especially in the United States. So the only known diamond mine at that time in North America was in Murfreesboro, Arkansas.
Oh.
And it had actually been turned into a state park. It's called Crater of Diamonds?
Something park? Like that, yeah.
And so what I did is a thin section study of the diamond ore at that park. Made a couple trips there, maybe 3 total, I guess, or something like that. And so doing this paper where I needed to do something besides a thin section study, I needed to get like a little background on diamonds and kind of do a little more development of this paper. And so since I'm in an oil state and there's actually nothing in, literally very little in libraries or whatever, so I took a correspondence course with GIA on diamonds, and my instructor, I guess I'll say correspondence instructor, I was definitely needing to get this paper done. So all of those questions that I couldn't answer, I basically asked her. So that first paper I got back, she thought, wow, he's really into this. I don't remember now what the comment was, but I was just asking questions. You had a little back part of this is back before internet or whatever, so it's all written. And so I would just ask those questions, and she was basically doing a lot of the research I was probably supposed to do, but didn't have access to, but she did.
Good morning, Patty.
So I really enjoyed that correspondence course, and by that time I was kind of hooked into the basically gemstones, because mineralogy deals with possibly gemstones, but a lot of it is more just crystals. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's gem quality. And so going to GIA is not inexpensive, and now I've went to college for 4.5 years, and unlike today's college graduates, I didn't have any debt, but at the same time I didn't have any money. So I worked for about a year and a half, maybe something like that, trying to save up enough money, and I basically enrolled in GIA. And at that time, that would have been when gold and diamonds were going up. Hunt brothers were trying to corner the silver market, and so GIA was busy turning out a lot of that was diamond graders.
Yeah.
So I got on or got in, I guess, and I really didn't want to go to Los Angeles or Santa Monica by myself. So I talked a cousin into going with me. He just graduated from college with a business degree, if I remember right. And he liked the idea, I guess, of going to California. He hadn't pre-registered or tried to get into GIA. So when he went out there, he actually wasn't enrolled in a class or whatever, but being out there,
so he was a walk-on.
Kind of a walk-on. Yeah. It was one of those deals where I guess they would have some people that basically backed out or didn't make the class or whatever, and so he got in, I think, about 2 months after I started. So went through GIA, and that was a great experience. That was it was like you're studying something that you really, really enjoyed, I guess. And, my classmates were from almost all over the world, and, especially India. We had India, South Africa, Japan, Israel.
A little bit of everywhere.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, I guess this doesn't make a whole lot of difference to the consumer out there, but the president of GIA at the time was Richard T. Liddicoat. He's kind of like the
Einstein of...
Yeah, kind of like...
the gemology world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, went through that, and so go through GIA, and, I had saved up some money, and it got close by the time I finished there. So I actually started looking for a job and got to be good friends with the job placement lady or whatever. So whenever a job came in, she would give me first shot at it. And so I interviewed with...
Bet that felt special.
Yeah. Well, it kind of did. I mean, it was... So I interviewed with basically a company that was kind of investment diamonds, because like I said, back then diamonds were a pretty hot commodity because the gold was going up, silver was going up, and then high color, high clarity diamonds were, a lot of that was, if it had a GIA cert of F color and higher, especially if they got to D's and E's and internally flawless, those stones, a lot of them
were skyrocketing.
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't even actually see the diamonds. They were just buying basically the paper. I mean, if it was a D internally flawless from GIA, that was kind of that's what you want to buy. And so anyways, I interviewed with them, interviewed with basically the Zales Corporation. They were wanting to put together an educational program for, I'm going to say, some of their employees, and I'm not sure what that was. And then I also interviewed with Colored Stone Die Struck Company on the East Coast. And so I graduated in March of '78, and by May of '78 I was employed. So I had a little bit of, part of that was kind of running around doing interviews.
Yeah.
So
it's not a lot of time, though.
No, not a lot of time. What I ended up with is I ended up with working for the company on the East Coast, And for the most part, I didn't know much about selling, but after you get out of GIA, you feel like you're almost a genius as far as gemstones. I mean, they're real thorough on that educational part, and
Yeah.
so you feel like you know everything, which you don't, but
At least in the jewelry business, you know everything you need to know.
you got a better start than a lot of people do, I guess. So went out there, and the reason they were trying to find somebody or hire somebody at the time is they had 3 salesmen that were, I'll say, at retirement age. The youngest one was 64 and the oldest one was 75. And so I traveled with all of their salesmen but 2, because once I got there, the ones that they thought were at retirement age apparently got younger. So I kind of went in with the condition that I'd like to have like 6 to 8 weeks of kind of on-the-job training, and that turned into like a year and a half. So what was really nice is, for the most part, I didn't have a huge amount of responsibility. So I was almost like a paid
internship?
Paid vacation.
Oh.
You know, because I traveled with, you know, the first salesman I traveled with was out of Chicago, and that guy had been in the territory for 34 years.
Whoa.
So everybody we called on was almost like family. You know, there for the first 20, 30 minutes that we was in a store, maybe, we just talked about catching up with the kids and the grandkids, and, you know, maybe how their golf was or whatever. And I can remember Ed asked me, he goes, after that first week or 2 that I'd been with him, he goes, well, what's the hardest part of the job? And I go, it's the standing up. I mean, I wasn't used to, a lot of places we went to, we just stand at the case and visit. And he just kind of laughed, you know, because really, you know, he would go in and kind of check to see what they had, and we'd visit, and then he'd show them what was new, and then it's just like we'd write up this order. It's like it didn't seem like he did anything at all. And but what was nice about that is those guys had been in the territory for so long, they knew where all the good restaurants were at. We stayed at really nice hotels. They all had really nice cars. So I did that for a year and a half, traveling around, and ended up with what was called the Mid-Atlantic. So I had from, did somebody come in? Oh. So I had from New York City to Virginia Beach. And
such a terrible place, you
yes.
know.
Well,
coast.
There was a lot of people. You know, that, you know, you get over into Texas, you know, you go 750 miles from here before you get out of
The state.
And there I went 750 miles would have covered my whole territory. I mean,
And how many states? Like 10 or more?
well, I would New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Virginia and
Maryland, Delaware,
you know, because I lived in Delaware.
New Jersey.
Yeah, well, we already said New Jersey.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was, you know, and people back east, back then, I guess, they always thought that, you know, that was a huge territory, and population-wise, it was. I mean,
Yeah.
I had some large cities or whatever, but
you could cover your whole territory in a day if you would just drive it.
yeah. Well, and like if somebody needed something like really bad, and I was in Delaware, was almost kind of in the middle.
But if you were in New
territory.
York and you needed to go to Virginia,
Yeah,
you could do it in a day.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas
You got salesmen now that have, like, maybe they have the Midwest, and they have from North Dakota to Texas.
And North Dakota's not even considered the Midwest.
Yeah. They got.
Let's say,
You might not even be able to fly it in a day.
Yeah, I traveled with a guy that had North and South Dakota, Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, and just in Montana, I mean, whenever I was on the road, I could probably see, if I had the time, I could probably see 5 or 6 accounts
in a day.
Easy. And probably 5 or 6 just in one city.
Yeah.
And the guy that had the states I just talked about, say he's in Montana, maybe he could see 2 in a day, maybe, because distance there, and back then what was nice about Montana is you could drive as fast as you wanted to.
Yeah.
It's like,
which I think you still can. They have like suggested speed limits.
Well, and I think they enforce it a little bit more because the federal government was going to take away highway funds if they didn't do some kind of policing on the road.
But anyway, so you ended up doing traveling salesman for a while, and then that got you back into the retail business. How?
Okay, so the cousin that went out there with me ended up in Chicago as a diamond buyer. Well, for the most part, coming from a small rural area in the Oklahoma Panhandle, Chicago didn't fit the cousin very well, and East Coast really didn't fit me. I kind of got bored. Like I said, I could cover my territory. Some of those guys I was seeing maybe 3 or 4 times a year, and a lot of them didn't want to see me more than 2 times a year. So, somewhat got a little bit bored. I mean, it's not that I didn't enjoy the area or whatever, but a couple's happened. So, anyways, cousin and I started talking about going back, and we were actually going to start insurance replacement business. And at that time, there was maybe 1 or 2, I'll say, companies that were doing that. So we came back and we went and visited a couple places and stuff. And when I'd been on the road traveling with those salesmen, I'd called on a store that was kind of my family had actually done business with. My mom and dad had actually done business with in a little town, Liberal, Kansas. And while we were there, and I still didn't have my own territory, the guy that had that store actually asked me if I wanted to buy the store. And I was kind of thinking that he was going to ask me if I wanted to work because he knew I'd been to GIA, but I wasn't expecting him to offer the store for sale. So I really didn't even know what to say to him at the time.
But it was already a well-established store.
Yeah.
Really well-established store.
Yeah.
Started in 1956.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was pretty prominent in the community already.
Yeah. A fairly big trade area, at least mileage-wise.
Yeah.
People-wise, not a huge trade area. So anyways, told the cousin about it. And so it probably took us, I don't know, 6-8 months to kind of figure things out. We had one meeting in Chicago, and then basically got an attorney and an accountant and kind of got things kind of figured out that way, negotiated the thing, and then we came back to Liberal, would have been January of 81, and we bought the store in July of 81. So we worked about 6 months, almost to the day. We would have taken over that store July 1st. So
2 days ago.
Yeah, that was yes, yeah.
Yep.
So started out in a little bitty, I'll say, office space in a bank, actually the biggest bank in town. And there was a travel agency, us, and then the bank. And the bank got bigger and bigger, ended up scooting out the travel agency, and then they basically
Ask you to leave.
wanted our space, but there wasn't no big push because we were actually a good customer of the bank too. So we ended up moving to another location in 1985, and then
And that store, which a lot of our viewers know, that are up in that area, which was Collins Diamonds.
right. Oh yeah, I never did say what that was.
Yeah, which was started by Paul Collins in 1956.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, cousin and I had the store until
2001.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2001, and
Basically bought him out at that point.
right.
Yeah.
And then, kind of in the meantime, I'm going to say, what were you? Maybe 4, 5, 6 years old, 5 years old, maybe. Whenever you came in, for like a couple days to.
Yeah.
Actually, you made a sale. I think the first day you was there, you had a seersucker suit on, if I remember right.
Yeah, my little yellow plastic briefcase.
Well, I don't remember the briefcase. I remember the suit.
Yeah, and at that time we had a jeweler by the name of John Martin that was really good. Tall, older, skinny guy, pretty laid back, pretty funny. So
really,
he was
really smart. We called him Dr. Martin.
Yeah.
Not only did he have his,
not the shoes.
Not only was he not only a graduate gemologist, but he was also a CG, a certified gemologist with the American Gem Society, and he had his FGA from Great Britain.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was only two
in the whole state
that had their FGAs. And I'm going to say there probably wasn't more than, I was going to say 100, but for sure there wasn't more than 150 FGAs in all of the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, the guy was really smart, but that's actually where I kind of got started in it, because about that same time, I would have been about 5 years old, is whenever I could reach the bench polisher, and so he had me polishing watch bands, which I later figured out was probably not the smartest idea, because I was also polishing expansion bands, which tend to grab on the polisher.
I didn't know that he had you doing that.
Yeah, and so I had a little step stool so I could actually see what I was doing. I could reach it just standing there, but I had a little wooden step stool and started polishing these watch bands for absolutely no reason at all, other than it was something to do, and he thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually learned quite a bit from John just in that short period of time, that he was still at the store.
Yeah. Well, he was there for.
Well, but when I was growing up, I guess.
I'm trying to think when John retired, because I know
it would have been the early '90s.
We gave him a gold watch at 25 years.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that one and we were at 220 North Kansas in downtown Liberal at that point, and then in 2001, shortly after, 2003, and it was actually shortly after, it would have been 2 years after basically buying out the cousin.
Yeah.
We purchased the building next door, which had previously been a pretty big men's clothing store.
Well, and what we were in was Kelly's men's store.
Yeah, so
we
just kept absorbing their store.
We went from, and they were both really nice men's stores, and actually side by side, which was even more amazing.
Yeah, which I remember going into that store before it closed.
Which one, Kelly's?
Where we moved to.
Oh.
Yeah, and so ended up buying that building, which was 222 North Kansas. And basically did a complete remodel of the store, and that we would have gotten in there December of 2003.
And to kind of give you an idea, I'm going to say we had maybe 700 square feet in the first store.
Yeah. And then we went to that showroom size, which was really small and really tight, especially around Christmas time.
Yeah. And then the one in 85 was probably maybe 1,600 square feet. That
total.
was the whole building, probably. But we had probably maybe 1,000 square feet showroom.
I don't know if it was that. It was maybe close, yeah.
Because it was
bigger.
still
tight.
It was bigger. It was a long, skinny building. I think it's like 16 foot wide and 110 foot long. So it was.
But then we moved next door.
Yeah, and
into
then
that building, and it was about 1,800 square foot showroom.
Yeah.
With multiple diamond room offices and stuff like that on the floor, and a big shop and basement and all this other stuff that was kind of nice.
Because we'd pretty much kind of outgrown all of those. I mean,
yeah.
Whenever we bought the store, when cousin and I bought the store in '81, there was basically 3 to 4 employees. Most of the time, I would say probably 3. And so whenever the cousin and I bought that, then we would clear up to 5 employees.
Whoa.
And then when we moved over to the one in 85, that would have been, I'm trying to think how many we would have had there. We'd have probably had 5.
Yeah, 5 to 6 at
5
one
to
point.
6, yeah. And then when we moved to the next one, we probably had...
At one point, I think we had 8.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And then that store, we ended up getting a lot of attention with that store. With the remodel, we got real bold, put in blue carpet like what we have in the store here, had a water fountain in there. Chandelier.
Clouds.
In-case LED lighting that nobody had seen in the area before. And so we had a lot of people coming in going, why is this store in Kansas? This looks like something that should be in New York or LA or something like that. Yep. And so in 2012, we submitted some photos and story of the store and the business to probably the biggest publication in the industry, which is In-Store Magazine. And they actually did and still do a contest called Cool Store. And we were actually selected...
Cool Stores of North America.
Yeah, Cool Stores of North America. So it's actually the United States and Canada.
And Mexico.
In Mexico. And so we submitted our profile, I guess you could say, to them. And we were actually picked as one of the top 10 small cool stores of North America in 2012. They ranked some of our other stuff. They talked about education and services and marketing and online presence and all that. And of those, we were in the top 5 of all those categories, and we were actually number 3 in overall marketing, and we were number 1 in online presence and online marketing. And with our marketing, what was really crazy with that is we pretty much owned the advertising market in Southwest Kansas.
Well, we owned the radio.
Yeah.
Radio
so of all the radio stations that were there were 3 real prominent ones. There was all actually one business that just happened to have 3 frequencies, I guess you could say. So we basically had a 60-mile radius, and actually maybe further in some directions.
Yeah, maybe a little bit further in some directions.
That we had pull. So being that we were in Southwest Kansas, we actually pulled from 5 states pretty regularly, being Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado. And it was just kind of cool to receive that award. And we ended up hosting basically an award party at the store, and had a great turnout. So we at the old store that we had next door, we could maybe fit 40 people in there before it got maybe a little little congested.
I'm going to say we wouldn't want the fire department to show up because they probably think there was too many on there. But.
And then when we had our awards party for the Cool Store Award, and we of course had it, in the newspapers and everything covered it and everything. I mean, it was kind of a big deal. So we had front page and everything. And so when we hosted that event, I think we ended up having, it was kind of a come and go deal, but I think we had over 200 people come basically just to see the store and hang out for a little bit. But we had a real good tradition at that store and everything, and thankfully, we had really loyal customers, a lot of which we still have customers here, and we thank you guys for still being customers with us. And then, so in all of that, kind of where I came in was, at 5, I kind of learned to polish and stuff like that.
Watch bands.
That
was a big service back then.
Yeah, but so one of the things that kind of really got me intrigued with it was I was always really interested in art and design and stuff like that. And when I was 12, we actually went to the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show in Tucson, Arizona, which if you haven't heard of it, you'll have to look it up. It's incredible. It's massive. It's literally like the whole city turns into a gem show.
Yeah.
And we picked up a bunch of stones, and some in particular that we bought was pretty much for me to kind of play around with the idea of designing jewelry. Was we got these really intense, they called glacier blue topaz, and they were like this color. They were real intense. And I actually ended up designing my first piece at 12, right before my 13th birthday, actually. And the reason I remember that is because I remember coming in, and at that time we were still designing everything on little index cards, basically, and then painting them. And I remember coming in, and Dan, which was the cousin, I kind of showed it to him, and he was kind of like, well, you drew that? You designed that? And he was kind of asking about it and everything, and he made a comment, something to the effect of, well, you're not even a teenager or something like that. And so that was the reason I remember that. It was kind of a weird thing to remember, but ended up making a little yellow gold drop pendant with a princess cut or a square cut blue topaz, and had a little round diamond in the top. And at the time, I can't remember who the goldsmith was at that time that was there. I want to say that John was still there, but it may have been Tracy. But either way, basically, it kind of taught me a little bit on how to cast metals and how to cast metals and how to set stones and do final polish and all that stuff. And that's kind of where I got started on that. So then, in that process, I also had to learn how to carve wax, because I remember that was the very first time I ever carved a wax was for that piece. And so, taking a two-dimensional object and having to use hand tools and a block of wax to create a three-dimensional object was that was a challenge, and it was a lot of fun. That was kind of what got me hooked. And so by the time I was 14, I was coming in whenever we had custom jobs, because we were, at the time the business was growing, and our goldsmith was pretty busy with doing repairs and stuff like that. So I started coming in and actually just carving waxes. And it was kind of nice, because at the time I was getting paid per piece instead of by the hour. So it was one of those, if I got like a really easy one, I was pretty excited about it, because it was going to be like a 1-2 hour carve, and I'd have some money to go buy something with. And so after doing that for a few years, we had a few goldsmiths kind of come and go. Gabe, which he gets on here once in a while. Gabe Bennett. No, I don't think he's on here now, but Gabe Bennett, who now has Gabe's Fine Jewelers in Bossier City, Louisiana, he kind of helped me with a lot of that stuff in learning how to do repair work. And so after
do you have much with Tara?
A little bit with Tara, but I was still a little younger at that time. And so when Gabe was there, that's kind of whenever I started to do a little bit of apprentice work at the bench, I guess you could say. And after a couple severe storms, Gabe decided that Southwest Kansas wasn't his favorite place to live, so he moved back to Texas. And we didn't have a bench jeweler for a while, so I started practicing a little bit more. And by the time I got really comfortable with sizing and retipping and stuff like that, then I basically started picking up doing a lot of the repair work and custom work.
But you went to
and then after doing that for about a year and a half. Actually, I guess it would have been maybe a little longer than that. I ended up after graduating from college, maybe a month afterwards, I ended up going to Virginia Beach, Virginia, and attending New Approach School for Jewelers with Blaine Lewis, who is a pretty ingenuitive bench jeweler that has his own little jeweler's school there. And studied with them for a while, mainly on stone setting, and came back, and it was kind of like one of those GIA experiences. You come back and you're like, oh, I can set any stone, any metal.
It was kind of amazing how much. I mean, everybody has something they're really comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then there are things that they're not comfortable with doing at all. And since I've had jewelers, bench jewelers or whatever, I can go down through each one of them and tell you what they're not comfortable with and what they're really comfortable with. But after Colton came back from that New Approach Jewelers that were out of Virginia Beach or whatever, there were stone settings I can remember that John just hated to have to do. And Colton was doing them like it was
decorating a cake or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was like really easy. And I'm going, wow, what's the deal here? And it's like, and he'd only been gone like, what was it, a week and a half, something like that.
It was really short, but a lot like these other programs and stuff. It was just real intense. It was the moment you got there. You got a cup of coffee, sat down, and it was get to work. And small class, I think there was only 15 in the class, and so they had all the right tools for you right there. And actually, and part of the cost of the program, you basically bought everything that was on the bench. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually still using all the tools that I got from that school here 13 years later.
Too bad they didn't have a laser back then.
Yeah. But yeah, it was really incredible experience, and came back and was doing all the repair work, doing all the custom work. And then 2 years later, we got to where we were getting even busier still. At this point, we've been in the new building for a few years. And so we were doing a lot more colored stone sales, bigger diamonds and stuff like that. And so it felt like it was kind of time to get a little bit more involved on the gemstone side. So in 2007, I actually moved to California and moved to Oceanside, California, and went to school in Carlsbad at the new GIA Robert Nawad campus.
Yeah,
which is their world headquarters.
It's like a palace compared to where I went.
And that was one of my top 5 life experiences, was going to GIA. Made a lot of great friends from all over the world. Still stay in contact with several of them from my class. Was in one of well, two of my classmates' weddings.
Yeah.
Had another classmate
And
that
two
was
of them came to your wedding.
three of them.
Three of them. Who's the third one?
John Gargi and Steve, because Steve was
Oh.
actually one of my. So one of them was actually one of my groomsmen in my wedding, and so that was just really cool getting to make those connections and everything. But it was a really fun experience. I remember, there was a couple of us that it seemed like every week we had a test every week, and it seemed like every week we were out early because it just seemed like the whole thing came naturally to me. And so by the time we finished our diamonds test, or got to our diamonds test, it was one of those that we had, we basically had 5 hours to do our diamond test, and I think I did mine in about 2.5 hours. And then when it came time to give them back and everything, I remember my diamonds instructor coming in. Her name was Louisa, and she had this big grin on her face, and she was handing tests back, and she stood up front and everything. She goes, "Well, one of the people in this room has actually tied the GIA record for test score on the diamonds test." And we're all kind of looking around at each other. We all kind of had a feeling we know who it was. And then she walks over and puts it down in front of me, and I was kind of surprised. I mean, I felt like I did pretty good on it, but I didn't know that I was going to tie the high score record on it. And then going through colored stones was kind of the same deal. There was just kind of this sense of knowing what I was doing the whole time. And by the time we got to it had the same thing. Actually, a classmate and I actually both tied the school record on the colored stone test. So that was a lot of fun. Kind of like you, we got offered jobs at GIA, but just you couldn't make enough money at GIA to work there and live in the same county.
Yeah, I guess I forgot about that. That I basically interviewed with GIA.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to be a diamond grader.
And then they wanted you to be an instructor.
Then they wanted me to be that was kind of a weird scenario, and you'd have to be at GIA to appreciate it, I guess, or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of like Colton living. Oceanside was probably still expensive.
Yeah, but
Santa Monica,
Carlsbad was just out of the question.
Yeah, and Santa Monica, we lived in the slums, or if we weren't living in the slums, we could see it from where we were at. But that's, everything was so expensive, and GIA at the time, and I think back, I should have maybe been an instructor for maybe a year or so and just lived paycheck to paycheck or whatever. I wouldn't have been any fatter because you couldn't have ate and lived at the same time. But
no,
but I didn't do that.
Yeah, and I didn't either. I had some classmates that stayed, but they were actually already living there. Mm-hmm. They stayed and were working in the diamond lab there at GIA for a while, but moved back to basically Oklahoma Panhandle where we were living, and had the store in Kansas. And then in 2012, after some really cold winters, they decided that they wanted to go somewhere a little warmer and found the store here.
Actually, it started a little earlier than that.
Yeah.
That would have been like 2009, 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. That. We actually started looking for another store, and I was wanting to go someplace warmer, and so we looked for a store somewhere between Florida and California, and did look at a couple places in California, but California was just kind of like the GIA thing. You'd have had to make so much money, just the cost of living, and seemed like regulations and taxes and everything in California was so unbusiness friendly or whatever, and So basically in 2012, we bought the Susann store, and so Carla and I moved down here basically on our anniversary.
Yeah, in 2012.
2012, and do that. Does Mom have a customer?
Mm-hmm.
Besides Ruby?
No.
Okay. Sorry about that, but we're trying to run a business at the same time. So came down here and basically hired staff, and we didn't buy any inventory, so we basically had we had vendors basically flying in to kind of help us out, because that was kind of a quick
3 week turnaround.
Yeah.
To go from no inventory to an open, fully stocked store.
Right. So we still had the store in Liberal. Colton was running the store in Liberal, and we kept it open, a couple more years, 2014.
Yeah, closed it in May of 2014. Yeah. And then we moved down here, and my wife Morgan's done all of our marketing and everything, and she's actually been named by In-Store Magazine as the social media queen in the industry. She's led a few seminars, one of them being a national seminar in Chicago on social media marketing and online presence. And you know, we've always had a really solid online presence because of that, which has been nice. So yeah.
And then, you know, we kind of left Carla out. The store in Liberal, the one that we ended up closing in 2014, almost that entire design of that store was hers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had chandelier and clouds in the ceiling and a fountain, and
we had 14-foot ceilings in that store. That was
we had a full bar, leather sofas. It was just really nice. It's like a lot of people when they first come in, it's like Colton said, you know, they go, man, this should be like in New York or LA or some bigger city or whatever. So she's the one that does all the displays, and she's just got a knack for that. Sometimes I never could figure out why you could buy store decorations, use them once, and they were already old. I mean,
happens a lot.
When we closed that store in Liberal, we had enough decorations or decorative stuff to probably do.
Well, we could do the store pretty much in every season, multiple times.
Yes.
We actually had an upstairs in that, where there were some old upstairs offices in that building, and we basically put up there was probably 20 shelving units that we put up there that were just completely loaded with decorations all the way up the stairs, above the stairs, over the stairs.
Yeah.
Basically any flat surface we could put them, there was decorations, and so it was constantly changing.
I just cringed. You know, I hate to say this. We had, what was it, a Dollar General or
Dollar Tree.
Dollar Tree, and when Carla had bought enough stuff there, she knew the lady that managed that Dollar Tree, and she would actually call Carla up and tell her, you know, we got this in. I think this might be something interesting. I just cringe. I mean, I go, oh no, not some more.
Yeah.
But we had some incredible window displays and in-store displays.
Yeah. And so last year, we right before Hurricane Harvey, we actually moved across the parking lot to this location we're at now in August of last year.
So within a couple weeks, we boarded up the windows and left.
Yeah. But we wanted to put our own spin on it, because the previous store was basically just move in and get going. Didn't do a lot of changing other than some paint and some fans and fixtures and stuff. But when we had a clean slate to work with, because this was actually previously a karate studio, so there was literally 2 walls, and other than that it was all open.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a little ingenuitive. We actually used our design software for jewelry
and designed the store.
We designed the store, and what was nice is we were actually able to 3D render the store complete with people in it, so we could kind of get an idea of where people's height and where their eyesight would be with certain things within the store. And we had 3 weeks basically to remodel and move. And luckily a contractor that we go to church with was available, and he did it in 2.5 weeks and gave us basically 3 days to move.
Yeah.
And so we actually were only closed, I think, 3 days. Yeah, basically, we were closed 3 days to move everything over and get everything prepped and ready to go. And so we're actually still kind of in the process of getting back to where we used to do all of our displays and stuff like that. And so we're getting some decorations up, and because by the time we got over here, then Hurricane Harvey hit. And then by the time all that kind of settled down, then it was Christmas. And then it was Valentine's.
Yeah.
And then we've kind of found ourselves where we're at now. And so...
Well, and then in the meantime, we had basically I would say like a big goal set back in June of last year.
Mm.
And we decided that we were going to finally do something that would have our name on it. And what we've done is we came up with basically a watch company.
Yeah.
So we now design and make. We've got 2 models with varying
designs a little bit.
Yeah. But where we're a custom store, we can.
Sorry, I got mosquito flying around here.
We got him.
We got him.
So that's kind of another thing that's kind of, that's taken some time to get that off the ground and designed and all put together. It's not,
it's not an easy task.
Doing a complicated ring is a lot easier than doing this watch.
Yeah.
But and I don't know if not everybody has seen this watch, but you need to come in and.
Yeah, we did an episode a few weeks back that you can go back and check in the archives to look at, and we actually display the watch and show it a little bit. But you can also see pictures of it on our Facebook page, Bartel Watch Co. Also on our Instagram with the same tag.
Or you can go to the website.
Or you can go to the website, Susann-jewelers.com, and click on the Bartel Watch Company tab at the top. But we wanted to share a little bit of the history. We know this is a little bit longer video, but we wanted to share a little bit of the family history of what led us here to Corpus and kind of the background. Really between us and the family, combined experience in the jewelry industry, we're a little over 75 years, I think, in the jewelry industry, if not more. So
that's just 3 of us.
Well, I'm counting Morgan too. Yeah. So with that, we've met a lot of people along the way, a lot of influential people in the jewelry business. Some that have stuff on display in the Smithsonian. Some that has
met Lazar Kaplan.
Yeah. Some that have made things to be displayed in the Smithsonian. Some that's made some stuff for celebrities that has actually been famous pieces of jewelry. We've met and know people that have various mines and cutters and stuff like that from around the world, and so it's allowed us not only as a family but as a business to offer things that most can't. Just because of the contacts that we've made over the years with just varying people in varying parts of the industry that has really made it kind of a unique experience for us and for our customers, because we've been able to get some really unique and sometimes basically museum worthy pieces that the odds of you finding it somewhere else is pretty much impossible. So if you guys have any other questions or anything regarding that or jewelry, please feel free to send us a message. We thank you guys for watching and hanging out with us today. And tomorrow's Independence Day, so have a great 4th of July. And
see an independent jeweler later on.
Yeah. So anyway, you can find us online at susanns-jewelers.com. Right here on Facebook. You can also see us on Instagram, Susann's Jewelers. And the Bartel Watch Company is also on Instagram and on Facebook. You can contact us at 361-991-7565. And you can also visit us here in store at 4226 South Alameda here in Corpus Christi. So
it's almost impossible to avoid us.
It is. You're going to find us everywhere. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Have a great 4th of July and a great weekend. We will see you next week right here on Family Jewels.
Thank you.
Bye.